Every year, billions of dollars are broadcast by federal, state, and foundation grant makers. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act alone unleashed $1.2 trillion. It is tempting for leadership to view this as easy money. The assumption is often that someone on staff can sit down, type up a quick proposal in a few days, and hit submit. The reality is a rigorous, multi-stage endurance event. It demands brutal data analysis, strict enforcement of deadlines, and navigating complex compliance frameworks long before you write a single word. Many organizations burn out because they position their grant search dial to the wrong frequency. They chase funding pools that their current staff simply are not equipped to handle. Pursuing a grant you do not have the capacity to manage is an expensive drain on your team's time. Success depends on aligning your funding targets with your actual operational reality. To find that alignment, we have to map the 3 distinct funding pipelines. This chart shows how direct federal, state pass-through, and foundation grants compare across award size, complexity, and the timeline to get funded. Direct federal grants offer the highest potential payouts, but as you can see, they require navigating extreme complexity and the longest waiting periods before funds are dispersed. State pass-throughs sit in the middle. They filter federal dollars through local agencies. The application barriers are slightly lower, but the state-level bureaucracy introduces a highly unpredictable timeline. Foundation and corporate grants offer much smaller payouts, but they feature the lowest barriers to entry and the fastest turnaround from application to funding. Before you dedicate hours to drafting a narrative, you have to look at your internal administrative bandwidth and choose the tier that matches it. Direct federal grants offer the scale to fund large research initiatives or major infrastructure overhauls. But even being considered requires heavy pre-award inputs. You will need to construct complex logic models to prove cause and effect outcomes and generate rigorous benefit-cost analyses to justify the investment. If you win, you must adhere strictly to the OMB Uniform Guidance, a dense set of federal rules that dictates exactly how every dollar is tracked, spent, and reported. The allure of large-scale capital comes attached to a heavy administrative burden. Managing these grants requires strict oversight that can easily paralyze an unprepared operational team. If your organization relies on staff juggling multiple roles rather than a dedicated full-time grant manager, pursuing direct federal grants is a trap. State pass-through grants offer an alternative route to federal dollars. This chart maps grant types by effort and impact. Notice that pass-throughs sit right in the center. The federal government provides the money, but state administering agencies evaluate the applications. To secure these funds, you must navigate state bureaucracy and align your project with hyperlocal political priorities alongside federal objectives. Targeted programs like the Nonprofit Security Grant Program, or NSGP, were created because the attacks on September 11th exposed the vulnerabilities of high-risk nonprofits and places of worship. The primary trade-off here is timeline unpredictability. Because each state manages its own process, application deadlines vary, and final funding distributions can easily stall in local administrative bottlenecks. These pass-throughs are highly viable for mid-sized entities, provided your team has the patience and flexibility to weather the state-level bureaucracy. That brings us to foundation and corporate grants.
Looking again at the effort versus impact chart, you can see these programs plot very low on the effort axis, while their impact varies widely. Winning these awards rarely requires a 100-page proposal. Instead, it relies on aggressive networking, building relationships with program officers, and demonstrating a tight alignment with their specific mission. A reliable tactic is to analyze an organization's Form 990 tax documents. This allows you to verify a foundation's past funding priorities and average award sizes before you spend time reaching out. The decision timelines are fast and the entry barriers are low, but the total financial yield is usually much smaller than a federal or state award. Because they require significantly less administrative overhead, foundations remain a high probability target for organizations operating without a dedicated grant writer. If capacity is your main constraint, artificial intelligence can act as an accelerator, allowing your existing team to increase their application volume. AI tools can rapidly process guidelines, generate standard proposal language, and format budget justifications, significantly reducing the raw hours spent on initial drafts. However, AI cannot source authentic local data, build a relationship with a funder, or provide the persuasive human context required to win a competitive review. It allows teams to draft faster, but it demands rigorous human oversight. you still have to verify every claim and ensure the narrative accurately reflects your community's needs. Knowing what is available is only half the process. You have to match the pipeline directly to your internal capacity. This decision tree starts with a simple question. Do you have dedicated full-time grant staff? For small nonprofits or rural schools, the answer is usually no. If you lack dedicated staff, avoid direct federal grants and focus on local foundations and state pass-throughs. Frontline agencies, like small police departments, face immediate, high-stakes operational realities every day. They simply do not have the luxury of pulling an officer off duty to dedicate 100 hours to a single application. For mid-tier organizations, like hospitals or mid-sized cities, target state pass-throughs, like those managed by FEMA, and leverage AI tools to increase output volume. If your goal is to secure massive, direct federal dollars, you cannot treat grant seeking as a part-time job. You must invest in dedicated, full-time grant professionals to manage the complexity. Ignoring this capacity alignment often leads to burnout and proposals that fail to meet the rigorous standards of federal and state evaluators. Even if you win the award, you must account for the post-award trap, ongoing costs that hit your organization long after the grant ends. Grant money might cover the startup costs for new computers or specialized equipment, but your organization's operating budget will be on the hook for the software subscriptions, the cybersecurity protections, and routine physical maintenance. We see this reality frequently with facility upgrades driven by real-world tragedies. Funding might install panic alarms at a high school, but the district must pay for the perpetual upkeep and monitoring once they are active. Evaluating the true return on the initial financial payout of the grant. The most successful organizations tune their dials to the grants they have the capacity to manage and the projects they can actually afford to sustain over the long haul.